we turn to Nikki Haley. She served as President Trump's ambassador to the United Nations. She's with us now for her first live interview since she stepped down last year. She's also written a new book about her time in the administration. It is called With All Due Respect. Ambassador Haley, good morning. It is good to see you.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
Well, these aren't ordinary times. As we sit here, we're about to have public impeachment hearings begin. You mentioned recently in an interview that you don't think the president's conduct with regard to Ukraine is impeachable. Have you made up your mind?
You know, I have made up my mind. I mean, impeachment is literally the worst punishment you can do to a public official. And here you've got a situation where there was no investigation and the aid flowed as it was supposed to. So when you look at that situation, it's hard to see where impeachment would qualify for that.
Can I stop you right there? Because that, I mean, with all due respect, to borrow a phrase, that doesn't seem like much of a defense of the president, that he might have tried to do those things, but it didn't work out. So it's all okay.
I mean, impeachment is serious. It's the most serious thing you can do to a president. The other side of this is we are less than a year away from the election. Instead, let the people decide. Let them hear the testimony. That's fine, but let them decide.
It's serious, no question about it. The people will get to weigh in a year. But let's just set aside that issue of impeachment. Let's talk about the conduct here and whether you think it's appropriate. Let's stick only to the undisputed facts. I have the transcript of the call in question that the White House itself released. So this is not in any controversy. So let's talk about that and that alone. The president has said this was a perfect call. Do you think this was a perfect call?
If in his mind he thinks it was a perfect call.
What do you think?
You know, I think it's never a good practice for us to ask a foreign country to investigate an American. It's just not a good practice. Having said that, there's no insistence on that call. There are no demands on that call. It is a conversation between two presidents that's casual in nature. And, you know, it's just hard to find anywhere that the president of Ukraine would have thought funds were being held and that he had to do this.
Well, I mean, as a backdrop, and you, among all people, know how important these funds are to Ukraine. You were one of the leading voices on behalf of Ukraine against Russian aggression. They always know that the funding of their military is hanging over their heads, do they not?
But they also know that President Trump has been very strong for Ukraine by giving anti-tank missiles, by going against Russia, holding the sanctions, expelling
the aid was
diplomats.
on hold at that moment. The aid did go on hold. It eventually was released.
You know, you can have those hypotheticals. It was released. That's a fact.
The aid was held up. That is not a hypothetical, right?
Was the aid released? It was.
Okay. You know, one of the things when we talk about the call, and you said, you know, I think I won't put words in your mouth. I think you said it's really not advisable to have someone asking, a president asking for a political favor like that, asking for an investigation into an American citizen. You know, I went back, actually looked at your resignation letter, and you said, through it all, we were always placing America first. How is asking a foreign country to investigate your political rival putting America first?
Well, I think,
whose interest is that in? Is it in America's interest or is it in the president's personal interest?
I mean, Ukraine has always been an issue with corruption. That was the case, that we always knew that there was corruption that was involved.
Okay, but the corruption mentioned by the president here has to do with Joe Biden and the DNC server. Those are the two very specific examples.
And Americans should want to know the answer of, did Biden pressure the prosecutor to, you know, to do what he did? And I think there's a real question there. You can question the president, but you also have to question what Biden did.
There may be questions there, but let me ask you this.
But there's questions all the way around.
But let's do a weighing of interest. As between America's interest in making sure that Ukraine is able to battle the aggression of Russia, our adversary, as you well know, and whether there's a U.S. interest in looking into Joe Biden's son and the DNC server, which is the greater interest?
Well, I think you can't put it into that and make sure that that's equal. I mean, I think what you have to look at the fact is we should ask, was Biden's position abused? The same way you're looking at the president, you have to look at Biden. And not only that, Savannah, President Trump was so strong on Ukraine. He had stronger policy on Ukraine than President Obama did. So this was a strong relationship. The Ukrainian ambassador was one of my closest allies on the Security Council.
Let's talk about another explosive story that you have in your book, where you talk about how then Chief of Staff John Kelly and Rex Tillerson, then the Secretary of State, came to you at one point and pulled you aside and said they were trying to, quote, save the country and actively working to resist the president. Can you tell us what happened in that moment?
Yeah, we were having a meeting within the Oval Office. Rex and I disagreed on an issue. I play it all out in the book, but basically we went to John Kelly's office, and it was a long 2-hour meeting where they basically said that they were not trying to undermine the president. They were trying to save the country. But this was the issue is, this wasn't that they thought there was a rogue president in the White House. This was the fact that they disagreed with him on policy. They didn't think we needed to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. They didn't think we needed to get out of the Iran deal.
You say in the book, these were dangerous people. You write that in the book.
I mean, I was a governor. And if people in my cabinet tried to undermine me, it's very dangerous.
Did you say that right then and there to them? Hey, guys, this is way out of line.
They totally knew that I was not going to be with them. Because
did you say that?
They were. It was very aware.
And did you tell the president afterward?
I told them that we, if this is what the president wanted, and especially we were talking about the issue of Palestinian aid, that we needed to do that.
Did you say to the president later, hey, you got 2 guys working against you?
The president was aware, yes.
You told him?
Yes.
You did tell him?
Yes.
I go back and I look at what you've said about Tillerson and Kelly. I mean, you said they're dangerous people. You said that they were pursuing a policy agenda, that they weren't really trying to save the country. I think about General John Kelly. He spent more than 4 decades in uniform. He lost his son in battle. OK, you write it very dramatically. You say what is at stake is the U.S. Constitution itself. No disagreement with the president, no matter how heartfelt, justifies undermining the Constitution. John Kelly lost his own son in battle. He knows what it is to take an oath to the Constitution. Did he deserve a better or more generous assessment from you?
Well, first of all, I didn't call them dangerous people. What I said is what they were trying to do was dangerous. I have always referred to John Kelly as a patriot. I am a military wife. I respect him and his family for what they went through. But to undermine a president because you think that you know better than him is wrong. It's wrong whether it's a Republican president or a Democrat president. And at that point, if you disagreed with getting out of the Iran deal, if you disagreed with moving our embassy or getting out of the Paris Climate Agreement, go tell the president. And if you still don't like it, quit.
And you've said that you mentioned a couple times in your book where you yourself did confront the president privately over a couple of matters. You mentioned in particular his news conference with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki, in which he seemed to side with Putin over the conclusion of our own intelligence agencies on foreign soil about Russia's meddling in the election. You say you called the president. You said, I told him you made it sound like we were beholden to Russia. And then you said the president was surprised. No one around him characterized the press conference in that way. But I was always honest with the president, even when others around him weren't. Really? You were the only person? I mean, that news conference was globally condemned because of that moment. But you were the only person in the administration who said, hey, that didn't look so great.
That's what he told me. I mean, when I said I wanted to meet with him, and I go through that in the book, when I said I wanted to meet with him and I said, look, this sounded soft. And he said, really? John Kelly was in the room with me when I had this meeting, and he looked at John and he said, all of you guys said I did great.
Well, this is the same John Kelly who you say is actively working to undermine him because he's a danger to the country. I mean, how's that work? Explain that.
You ask him those questions because I have openly said, I know how you feel about Russia. He has been stronger on Russia than any previous president. And you can look at numerous results of that. But the issue was that on that topic, no one had said anything to him. And I thought it was hugely important. And you'll see later he comes out much stronger on Russia. And the point is, when I had my cabinet, what I asked my cabinet was, be creative, help serve the people, and tell me if you see something wrong. I did for him what I wanted my cabinet to do for me.
I am way over time, but let me just quickly, because it's been out there and you worked in this administration. Did you ever have any doubt about the fitness of this president to serve?
I never did.
Any doubt about his mental acuity?
I never did.
Any question about his truthfulness, his ability to tell the truth?
Savannah, I talked to him multiple times, and when I had issues, he always heard me out. I never had any concern on whether he could handle the job ever.
What about his truthfulness? Did you think he was a truthful person?
Yes. In every instance that I dealt with him, he was truthful, he listened, and he was great to work with.
Ambassador Haley, thank you so much. There are some really interesting stories in this book. It's out today. With all due respect, thank you for your time,
Thanks
Ambassador.
so much.
Appreciate it.